The galaxy had always been a place of order. Planets spun in steady orbits, stars glimmered like distant lanterns, and civilizations stretched across thousands of light years. For centuries, the different species of the galaxy had found ways to coexist. Trade routes were established, alliances were formed, and disputes were usually solved through negotiation rather than conflict. Wars were rare, and fear, though present, was measured and controlled. Among the oldest and most respected of these civilizations was the Vorel Collective, a species known for their calm minds and careful reasoning. The Vorel had long ago learned to manage conflict through diplomacy and consensus. Their cities were elegant towers of glass and metal, with flowing gardens between them. Every decision was weighed carefully, every step considered. To outsiders, the Vorel were a model of peace, a species that had conquered fear not by avoiding danger, but by thinking clearly. The Thalan Chorus was another influential civilization. Unlike the Vorel, the Thalans valued knowledge and innovation above all. Their starships were marvels of science, capable of traveling farther and faster than most species could imagine. They explored strange worlds, charted uncharted space, and cataloged the mysteries of the universe. The Thalans were curious by nature, and they taught others to embrace discovery while avoiding unnecessary risk. In this calm, orderly galaxy, most species believed they understood fear. They knew fear as a tool to survive, a warning to retreat, or a signal to negotiate. They had faced dangers before: rogue asteroids, hostile planets, and even occasional skirmishes with other species. And yet they had always believed that fear was a predictable, controllable emotion. Then came the humans. The humans arrived quietly, emerging from a blue and green planet at the edge of a sector long thought insignificant. They were small compared to some species, without the natural armor of the Draith or the strength of the Urkon. Their technology was advanced but not extraordinary, certainly not enough to command immediate respect or fear. Yet something about them caught attention across the galaxy. The first human ships entered galactic space with an air of curiosity rather than arrogance. Observers noted that humans were noisy, energetic, and sometimes reckless, but they were also persistent and inventive. They repaired ships with unusual methods, adapted to harsh environments quickly, and solved problems with creativity no one had anticipated. The Vorel and Thalans watched with interest. "They are unusual," said Ambassador Lyrith of the Vorel. "Not dangerous yet, but different. Their responses to challenges are unexpected." In the early years, the humans mostly explored space, establishing small colonies on planets with thin atmospheres and barren landscapes. They built cities quickly, often in locations that other species had dismissed as inhospitable. It was in these early years that the galaxy began to notice something else. Humans were social in ways that other species could not fully understand. They worked together, shared resources, and celebrated small victories with energy that was infectious. Other species did not see humans as a threat. In fact, many considered them almost naive. "They do not fear like we do," the Draith scouts reported. "They take risks that seem unnecessary. They approach dangers that wiser species avoid." But the humans did fear. They feared for their families, for their homes, for each other. The difference was that their fear did not make them freeze or retreat. Instead, it drove them to act, and this would be the first lesson the galaxy would learn. Humans' fear was not weakness, it was power. It began quietly with minor incidents at the fringes of galactic space. A human colony was threatened by pirates, a small fleet of hostile raiders who thought the humans would be easy prey. The pirates were strong, their weapons capable of destroying ships with ease. Most species would have surrendered or negotiated, but the humans fought back. They built traps, fortified their settlements, and most importantly, they protected one another. The Draith observers, accustomed to seeing species fight with precision or flee when outmatched, were confused. "Why do they risk everything for others?" they asked. "Why not retreat? They are small. They are weak, and yet they fight." Word of these human actions spread slowly across the galaxy. At first it was just a curiosity. Then it became a topic of discussion at every council and trade meeting. Some admired the humans. Some dismissed them as reckless. But none could deny that humans were different. It was during this period that the first official contact between humans and the galaxy's major alliances occurred. The humans arrived at the Vorel consulate, their small fleet approaching cautiously but confidently. Vorel officials watched from the observation decks, noting every move. Ambassador Lyrath approached the human delegation. They were led by a man named Captain Elias Harper, who was neither the tallest nor the most imposing figure present. But there was a presence in his eyes that made the Vorel pause. Harper spoke clearly, directly, and without fear. He did not demand respect, nor did he beg for it. He simply explained his people's intentions. They wished to explore, to learn, and to build alliances where possible. Your people are unusual, Lyrath said finally. You do not behave like other species. You do not fear the unknown as others do. Why? Harper smiled faintly. We do fear. But fear doesn't stop us. It tells us what matters. It tells us what is worth protecting. The Vorel had no immediate answer. It was a simple statement, yet it carried a weight they could not measure. For the next few decades, humans expanded slowly but steadily. They explored planets abandoned by other species, mined resources in ways that minimized harm, and established colonies that quickly became self-sustaining. They were noticed not for their technology or military power, but for their spirit. Other species began to send observers and even advisors to learn from humans' methods, and yet the galaxy remained largely unaware of the storm that was approaching. The Draith Dominion, a militaristic empire known for expansion and conquest, had begun moving through sectors near human colonies. The Draith were methodical, calculating, and cruel in their campaigns. They believed that any species that resisted them would eventually be crushed. They did not understand humans. When the Draith first approached human space, they sent emissaries, expecting an easy surrender. The humans did not comply. Instead, they prepared. They built defenses, trained their people, and reached out to neighboring species for aid. Not out of fear, but out of necessity and care. For the first time, other species began to see humans' fear in action. Not the fear of retreat or self-preservation, but the fear of losing something truly valuable. Humans feared losing their homes, their families, and their way of life. And that fear drove them to act with precision, courage, and creativity. By the time the Draith reached the outskirts of human territory, whispers had already begun across the galaxy. The humans are different. They do not fight like others. They do not fear like others. And so the galaxy entered a new chapter. A chapter where fear itself would take on a new meaning. Because for the first time, the civilizations that had long believed they understood danger were about to learn a lesson taught by a small blue planet and the humans who called it home. They thought they knew fear. They were wrong, and the humans were about to show them why. The galaxy was vast and peace was always fragile. Even the calmest regions were aware that danger could emerge suddenly. While most species had adapted to the patterns of the universe, the humans were about to test those patterns in a way no one could predict. It began quietly, on the edge of the known sectors. A fleet of ships emerged from the shadows of uncharted space. The ships were sleek, black, and built purely for war. This was the Draith Dominion, a species that valued strength, strategy, and obedience above all else. Their empire expanded relentlessly, conquering every world that resisted them. They were feared not only for their weapons, but for their efficiency. Resistance was crushed swiftly, leaving entire sectors silent in their wake. The Draith scouts approached the human frontier slowly, expecting an easy conquest. The humans were small, with colonies scattered across planets that others had abandoned. Their ships were limited in number, and their weapons were modest compared to the Draith's advanced technology. Most species, if faced with the Draith, would have surrendered without a fight, but humans were not like most species. On the human colony of EpicSciFiTales, the Draith fleet first appeared on sensors. The planet was modest but thriving, a mix of domed cities and open landscapes where humans had learned to adapt to the environment. At the command center, Commander Lila Reyes studied the approaching fleet with calm urgency. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. 8 ships, replied her tactical officer. "Weapon systems active. They are scanning for weaknesses." Reyes nodded. "Prepare defenses. Evacuate civilians to shelters. Initiate communication channels. Let's see what they want." Her team moved quickly but not frantically. Humans had a way of working under pressure that was different from other species. There was no panic, only purpose. Every action was deliberate, and every person knew their role. When the Draith transmitted their demand, it was cold and precise. "Surrender your colony. Submit to the Draith Dominion. Resistance will be destroyed. Most species faced with such a message would have complied immediately, but the humans did not. Commander Reyes studied the words carefully, then sent a reply. We will not surrender. We protect what is ours. You may approach, but know this, we will defend ourselves and each other. The Draith paused. They had faced stubborn species before, but humans did not act like the others. There was no fear in their words, only determination. The Draith fleet continued, confident that resistance would be futile. The humans' preparation was unlike anything the Draith expected. On Prime, they had built defensive positions using natural terrain, automated turrets, and mobile shields. They coordinated between city defense grids and planetary satellites to track incoming ships. Civilians were trained in safety drills, and every volunteer had a task. It was not just military strategy. It was a society preparing as one. As the first Draith ships descended into the atmosphere, human scouts reported their positions. The Draith fired, expecting minimal resistance, but human shields absorbed much of the attack. Automated turrets engaged with precision, and small human fighter craft harassed the larger ships, dodging missiles and lasers with calculated maneuvers. Across the galaxy, species observing the situation were astonished. They are outmatched, one Thalan scientist commented. Yet they fight with coordination and courage. How can this be? The answer was simple. Humans valued what they feared losing. Other species had fear as a guide for survival. Humans had fear as a reason to act, to protect. Back on Prime, Commander Reyes monitored the battle. She was not reckless. Every human fighter, every turret, and every shield was used wisely. She gave orders calmly, making adjustments as the Draith adapted their attacks. The humans learned quickly, responding to patterns and predicting moves. Meanwhile, in the cities, families helped one another. Children were taught to follow safety protocols while adults ensured no one was left behind. Communities worked together, providing food, shelter, and medical assistance even while the battle raged above. The Draith had never seen a species fight not only with weapons but with heart. After several hours of engagement, the Draith realized something crucial. The humans were not predictable. They did not follow standard patterns of fear and retreat. They adapted. They fought not for glory, not for conquest, but for survival and for each other. Aboard the Draith flagship, Admiral Koresh studied the reports. His eyes narrowed. They are unusual, he said, his voice tight. They do not yield. They do not panic. And their strategies. They change constantly. How is this possible? His officers were unsure. Their technology is modest, Admiral. Their numbers are limited. We should destroy them quickly. Koresh shook his head. It is not their strength. It is something else, something in their spirit. We have never seen this before. Meanwhile, the humans continued to coordinate seamlessly. Fighter pilots communicated with ground units, civilians assisted in repairing damaged defenses, and Commander Reyes adjusted plans in real time. The humans' fear did not paralyze them. It focused them. They feared the loss of life and their homes, and this fear became the foundation of their strength. Across the galaxy, other species began to take note. Messages from human colonies reached the Vorel Consulate and Thalan research stations. Reports described courage, unity, and creativity in the face of a far stronger enemy. Scholars debated how humans could act this way, while diplomats pondered the implications. For the Draith, the battle was more than just a test of force. It was the first time they faced a species that reacted unpredictably. The humans' fear was not the same as other species. They did not retreat or surrender. They did not freeze or beg for mercy. Instead, they turned fear into action, defending every point with careful strategy and relentless energy. Days passed, and the Draith tried different tactics, all of which failed. The humans anticipated attacks, adjusted defenses, and when necessary, counterattacked with surprising effectiveness. Every small victory reinforced their resolve. Their fear became focus, their concern for each other became power, and their determination became contagious. Even among the Draith, whispers began to spread. Perhaps we underestimated them. Perhaps fear is something we did not understand about humans. By the end of the week, the Draith fleet had withdrawn temporarily, not because they were defeated, but because they were cautious. They had encountered a species that did not follow the patterns they knew. Humans were not merely resisting, They were thriving under pressure, turning fear into unity and determination. On Alaris Prime, Commander Reyes stood atop a city tower, looking at the horizon where Draith ships had once appeared. She did not celebrate. She did not boast. She simply watched, aware that this was only the beginning. Her people had survived the first wave, but they knew more challenges would come. And yet there was confidence in her eyes. Humans had learned something essential about themselves. Fear did not have to weaken them. Fear could guide them, sharpen them, and bring them together. Across the galaxy, the message began to spread. The humans were different. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, but because they faced danger with courage, with unity, and with the willingness to protect what they loved. The galaxy had always believed it understood fear. But in the quiet battles on the fringes of human space, that belief was starting to crumble. And so, as the Draith regrouped and humans rebuilt, a silent tension settled across the stars. The galaxy had seen the first sparks of something extraordinary. They had seen humans fight, not recklessly, not out of rage, but out of care and courage. And the galaxy would never see fear the same way again. The galaxy had begun to whisper about humans. Across distant sectors, scholars, diplomats, and soldiers all spoke in hushed tones about the species that refused to yield. Yet for all the stories, few could truly understand why humans acted the way they did. It was not strength that defined them, nor was it technology. It was something deeper, a spark that came from unity, courage, and the willingness to act in the face of fear. And now, as the Draith Dominion retreated to plan their next move, humans began to show the galaxy what that spark could become. On the planet Orion 7, one of humanity's largest colonies, preparations were underway. The humans knew that the Draith would return. They knew that the battles to come would be more challenging than the first. Yet there was no panic, no despair, only determination. Commander Lila Reyes stood in the central command room, observing the human fleet and ground forces. She had spent days coordinating with engineers, pilots, and leaders from every sector of the colony. Every detail mattered: ship positions, defensive formations, supply lines, and evacuation routes. Yet her mind was on something more important: how to strengthen the spirit of her people. "Fear is natural," she said quietly, speaking to her team. "But fear must guide us, not control us. Remember why we fight. Remember who we protect." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Humans understood these words not as orders, but as truth. They worked tirelessly, building defenses, training units, and refining strategies. Every individual knew their role, and every individual knew the value of protecting each other. Across the colony, families prepared as well. Children helped reinforce shelters, adults repaired machinery, and the elderly assisted in organizing food and medical supplies. Everyone contributed. There was no division, no hesitation. The human strength came from this unity, this shared purpose that no force in the galaxy could easily break. Meanwhile, messages went out to neighboring systems. Other species watched cautiously, some skeptically. The Varel Collective sent representatives to Orion 7, hoping to study human methods and perhaps learn from them. The Thalan Chorus dispatched research teams, intrigued by the humans' adaptability and problem-solving skills. Yet the humans did not seek admiration. They simply worked together, quietly and efficiently, to prepare for the inevitable Draith return. As weeks passed, the Draith fleet slowly reappeared on scanners. Their numbers were greater, their weapons more advanced, and their strategy more refined. They had learned from their first encounter with humans, expecting a conventional species that would either flee or submit. They were wrong. Commander Reyes stood before her officers as reports came in. "They are approaching," said the tactical officer. "Weapons primed, shields at full capacity. Civilian movement is complete." "Good," Reyes replied. "We are ready." "Remember, the Draith underestimate us because they expect fear to control us. They do not understand that fear can bring us together, not tear us apart. We will show them the strength of unity." The first wave of Draith ships entered the atmosphere, firing relentlessly. Explosions lit the sky as their energy beams struck human defenses. Yet the humans responded with precision, using mobile shields to protect key areas and fighter craft to disrupt enemy formations. It was not just a battle of weapons. It was a battle of coordination, strategy, and ingenuity. Humans worked as one organism, each individual anticipating the other's actions. When one shield fell, another replaced it. When a ship was damaged, repair teams were already in place to restore it. Observers from other species watched in amazement. "They coordinate perfectly," said a Thalan engineer. "It is as if they are connected, not by technology but by purpose." The Draith fleet attempted to adapt, launching a series of unpredictable attacks. They expected humans to panic, to make mistakes under pressure. But humans did not panic. They adjusted, they adapted, and they continued to protect their people and their planet. Commander Reyes directed reinforcements, sending fighters to block vulnerable points and activating planetary turrets to intercept incoming attacks. Every move was calculated yet executed with speed and precision. The Draith realized that this was not just resistance, it was resilience. As the battle continued, humans began to push back. Small but decisive strikes damaged Draith ships, forcing their fleet to retreat in parts. For the first time, the Draith faced the reality that humans were not predictable. They did not act solely to survive, they acted to protect, to defend, to preserve. It was this difference that began to draw attention across the galaxy. Vorel and Thalan observers noted that humans did not fight out of anger, pride, or conquest. They fought for something more profound: care for one another and the courage to act in the face of fear. Meanwhile, on the ground, communities worked together seamlessly. Engineers repaired structures while medics treated the wounded. Civilians reinforced shelters and supplied food to those in need. Every action, no matter how small, contributed to the larger effort. Humans understood that survival depended not on individual power but on collective strength. The Draith commander, Admiral Koresh, watched in frustration. "They should not be able to resist us," he said to his officers. "Their numbers are small, their weapons weaker. Yet they continue. Why?" "No one knows," an officer replied. "It is unusual. Perhaps it is their spirit," Koresh scowled. "Spirit does not win battles. Strategy wins battles. And yet, they continue. They adapt. They coordinate. They protect each other with something I do not understand." Indeed, the Draith were facing an unfamiliar type of challenge. They had conquered countless worlds, yet humans were different. The Draith could destroy cities and fleets, but humans would always adapt, always find a way to protect their own, and always act with unity. Days turned into weeks, and the battle for Orion 7 continued. Humans were exhausted but resolute. Every loss was met with swift recovery, every victory with quiet determination. Commander Reyes moved among her people, encouraging, guiding, and observing. She understood that fear was natural, but she also knew that fear could be transformed into focus and courage. Across the galaxy, news of the humans' success began to spread. Species that had long accepted the Draith as unstoppable began to reconsider. Some offered assistance, sending supplies or volunteers to support human colonies. Others simply observed, eager to understand how a species so small could defy such overwhelming power. Through it all, humans remained humble. They did not seek glory or praise. They simply continued their work, united by a common purpose. Every individual, from pilot to engineer to civilian, understood the value of protecting one another and the importance of courage in the face of fear. And slowly, something remarkable began to happen. The humans' determination inspired others. Some neighboring colonies, previously indifferent, began organizing their own defenses. Some allied species started coordinating strategies with humans, sharing knowledge and building trust. The spark of human unity was spreading, not through force but through example. Commander Reyes watched these developments with quiet satisfaction. Humans had shown the galaxy that strength did not always come from weapons or numbers. True strength came from unity, courage, and the willingness to face fear head-on. The Draith, meanwhile, were forced to retreat temporarily, regrouping in the shadows of uncharted space. They had learned that humans could not be crushed easily, and every encounter left them wary, uncertain, and respectful in a way they had never experienced before. As the humans rebuilt their defenses and continued preparing for future challenges, the galaxy began to change. Species that had once underestimated humans now studied them, learned from them, and in some cases even followed their example. The humans' courage, unity, and willingness to act in the face of fear had begun to reshape the understanding of what a civilization could achieve. And so, as the stars continued to shine and distant worlds prepared for what might come next, one thing was clear: humans were no ordinary species. They were a force that drew strength from their fear, turning it into action, protection, and unity. And in doing so, they were beginning to change the galaxy forever. The spark had been lit, and it would not be extinguished. The galaxy held its breath. Across thousands of light years, species watched and waited, knowing that the Dreath Dominion would not allow humans to thrive without challenge. The Dreath had regrouped, studying humans carefully, and now they were returning with a fleet larger than anyone had seen. They carried their deadliest weapons, their strongest ships, and their most ruthless officers. Their plan was clear: crush the humans completely and make an example of their resistance. But humans were ready. On the planet Alaris Prime, every human, from soldiers to civilians, knew what was coming. Cities were reinforced, fleets were in formation, and defensive grids were fully operational. Commander Lila Reyes moved through the command center with quiet confidence, her eyes scanning reports and listening to her officers. There was tension in the air, but no panic. Humans had learned that fear did not control them, it guided them. "Admiral Chen, are the fighters ready?" Reyes asked. "All ready," said Admiral Chen. "Shields at full capacity, weapons online, civilian routes secure." "We are prepared for anything," Reyes nodded. "Good. Remember, the Dreath expect fear to make us hesitate. They will try to break us, but we fight for each other, not for them. Keep that in mind at all times." Across the planet, civilians moved calmly but quickly. Children were led to safe shelters, while adults assisted in every way they could, repairing ships, reinforcing walls, distributing supplies, and tending to the wounded. Even those too old or too young to fight contributed. Every action had meaning. Every human understood the value of unity. When the Dreath fleet first appeared in the sky, the humans did not flinch. The massive ships glimmered with deadly intent, their weapons primed and their formation precise. They expected fear. They expected humans to scatter or surrender. They were wrong. "Engage," Reyes ordered. Fighter craft streaked into the sky, weaving around Dreath ships with astonishing speed. Automated turrets fired with deadly precision, intercepting missiles and energy blasts before they could reach cities. Humans on the ground coordinated repair drones, medical units, and supply lines, ensuring no disruption to their defense. The Dreath commander, Admiral Koresh, watched in disbelief. "They fight with purpose," he muttered. "They do not panic. They do not falter, and they anticipate every move." His officers were silent. This was unlike any species they had faced. Others might have numbers, technology, or experience, but humans had something else entirely: a fear-driven courage that transformed into unity and action. As the battle escalated, Dreath ships pressed harder, firing in coordinated waves, attempting to break the human lines. But every attack was met with resistance. Humans adapted instantly. Shields moved, turrets recalibrated, and fighter squadrons responded faster than any Dreath algorithm could predict. Even more surprising, humans did not fight blindly. They did not act out of anger or pride. Every maneuver, every strike, every defensive action was designed to protect others. The Dreath could not anticipate this type of fear that made a species stronger rather than weaker. On the surface, human engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged infrastructure. Civilians carried supplies to soldiers, medical teams treated injured fighters, and every neighborhood contributed to the defense effort. The Dreath had expected chaos under pressure, but humans had created order from it. In the midst of the battle, Commander Reyes received a report from a remote settlement under direct attack. Several Dreath assault units had landed, intending to destroy the colony entirely. The humans there were outnumbered and outgunned. "Send reinforcements," Reyes ordered. "We will not lose them. Every life matters." Admiral Chen hesitated. "Commander, they are heavily armed. It could be suicide." Reyes shook her head.
"It is not suicide if it is necessary."
"They fight because they care. That is their strength. That is why they will survive." Fighter squads and ground troops moved swiftly to intercept the Dreath assault. Humans worked together seamlessly, surrounding enemy units and cutting off escape routes. Every strike was calculated to protect, not to destroy unnecessarily. Civilians assisted by guiding the wounded to safe zones and supplying energy to defensive systems. The Dreath soldiers were confused. They had expected fear, surrender, or chaos. Instead, they faced a species that would risk everything to protect what mattered. Every human acted not alone but as part of a greater whole. As the battle continued, the Draith realized that humans were not just unpredictable, they were inspiring. Other colonies nearby began to organize, coordinating with humans to reinforce defenses. Allies previously skeptical of humanity offered resources, pilots, and engineers. The humans' courage, driven by fear for one another, had begun to spark unity across the galaxy. On the Draith flagship, Admiral Koresh's frustration grew. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They should have surrendered. They should have panicked. They should have failed. And yet they persist." An officer spoke quietly. "It is not weakness that drives them, Admiral. It is their care for each other. Their fear is not of death, it is of losing what they value. That makes them dangerous." Koresh clenched his fists. He had never faced a species like this. Every move the Draith made was countered with precision. Every strategy anticipated. Every attack met with coordinated defense. Fear, which he had always considered a tool to control weaker species, now seemed to empower humans. Back on the planet, Commander Reyes coordinated one of the most critical maneuvers of the battle. A massive Draith assault ship was heading directly toward a human city. The city's shields could not withstand a direct hit. "Evacuate civilians," Reyes ordered. "Send in interceptors. We will stop them together." Pilots leapt into their fighters, weaving through the enemy's fire. Ground teams reinforced weakened shields. Engineers recalibrated turrets, and civilians assisted in guiding children and the injured to safe zones. Every human acted with purpose, knowing that their actions mattered. The Draith ship fired. Explosions rocked the city. Yet through coordination and sacrifice, humans managed to redirect energy, absorb damage, and intercept the ship. Fighters disabled critical systems, forcing it to retreat. The city was saved, not because humans were stronger, but because they acted as one unit, each aware of the stakes and each willing to face danger for others. For the first time, Admiral Koresh hesitated. He realized that humans could not be defeated through fear or intimidation. Their courage, rooted in love and care for one another, made them unpredictable and unbreakable. Every human life mattered, and every life was protected by countless others willing to risk themselves. The battle raged for days, but the Draith fleet began to withdraw. They had underestimated the humans' resilience and their ability to inspire unity. Humans were not merely defending, they were thriving under pressure, using fear not as a limitation but as a force to guide, to focus, and to protect. As the Draith retreated, Commander Reyes stood on a tower overlooking the city. Fires were still burning, and smoke rose from damaged districts, but people were alive, moving, rebuilding, and helping each other. The human spirit had endured. Across the galaxy, species observed the events in awe. They had long believed that fear was a weakness, a tool to manipulate or control. But humans had shown something else entirely. Fear could be a motivator, a unifier, and a source of strength when channeled correctly. In that moment, it became clear. Humans were not ordinary. They were extraordinary. Not because of technology, not because of weapons, not because of numbers, but because of their willingness to face fear, to act for others and to remain united in the darkest moments. And the Draith, who had once considered themselves unstoppable, were forced to reconsider everything. Humans had revealed a truth that no species had anticipated. True fear is not the absence of courage. True fear is when one risks everything to protect what they love, and that fear can make a species stronger than any weapon or fleet. The galaxy had seen the moment of human fear, and in that moment, it also saw something greater, the power of unity, courage, and care, and the galaxy would never see fear the same way again. The galaxy was quieter than it had been in decades. The Draith fleet had withdrawn, licking wounds and reconsidering strategies. For the first time in recorded history, an entire empire faced a species that refused to bow, refused to flee, and refused to surrender, not because of technology, not because of weapons, but because of the strength of their hearts. On Alaris Prime, life was returning to normal. Cities were repaired, ships rebuilt, and families reunited. Yet the calm was deeper than mere recovery. Humans had endured one of the fiercest assaults the galaxy had ever seen, and they had emerged not only intact but united, stronger, and more determined than ever. Commander Lila Reyes walked through the streets of the capital city. Children ran past her, laughing despite the scars of battle. Civilians were cleaning debris, repairing structures, and helping one another. It was ordinary life, yet extraordinary at the same time. Humanity had survived a storm that would have crushed almost any other species. Reyes paused to watch a small group of children working together to raise a temporary shelter for animals displaced by the attack. They laughed as they struggled with ropes and planks, yet they never gave up. In that moment, she understood something essential about humans. Their courage did not rely on fearlessness. It relied on love, care, and determination. "Commander," a voice called. It was Admiral Chen stepping beside her. "The Draith are retreating, but there are reports of other species observing us. They are sending aid and reinforcements to support our colonies." Reyes nodded. "Good. They are beginning to understand what we have known all along. Fear does not control us. It guides us, and we protect each other no matter the cost." Across the galaxy, the ripple effects of human courage were being felt. Systems that had once turned away from the Draith were now organizing defenses, inspired by human actions. Scientists and engineers shared knowledge, fleets coordinated strategies, and diplomats formed alliances that would have been impossible before. The humans' fear-driven courage had created a new kind of hope. A hope rooted not in dominance but in unity and protection. In the Vorel consulate, Ambassador Lyrath watched reports from human colonies. He leaned back in his chair, stunned. "They are extraordinary," he whispered. "We thought we knew fear. We thought we understood how a species should react. But humans, they do not act out of fear in the way we expect. They act because fear shows them what is important. And that makes them unstoppable." Even the Draith, once proud and confident in their superiority, began to reconsider. Admiral Koresh had returned to his flagship, quietly reviewing battle reports. He had faced countless worlds, countless species, yet humans had changed something fundamental in his understanding of conflict. "They do not fight for victory alone," Koresh said softly. "They fight for each other. That is why they are dangerous." Back on EpicSciFiTales, Commander Reyes gathered her leaders for a council. "We have survived the Draith," she began, "but this is only the beginning. Our success has inspired others. Our courage has shown the galaxy a new path. We must continue to lead, not with fear, but with unity and care. We must protect what we love and teach others to do the same." The council members nodded, understanding that this was more than strategy or tactics. It was philosophy. Humanity had demonstrated something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. Fear could be a force for good. When channeled through courage, love, and unity, it became a power that no weapon could match. Over the following months, humans expanded their influence, not through conquest, but through example. Colonies that had once struggled to survive were now thriving under human guidance. Other species approached humans for advice on organization, coordination, and defense. The galaxy began to recognize a new standard: the value of protecting life, the strength of unity, and the courage to face fear with purpose. At the edge of human space, a new alliance was forming. Vorel diplomats, Thalen engineers, and even small factions of Draith officers who had questioned their empire's approach came together to learn from humans. Together, they built communication networks, supply chains, and joint defense systems designed not for domination, but for protection. Commander Reyes watched the preparations with quiet pride. The galaxy was learning slowly but surely. Humans had shown that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. That lesson would shape the galaxy for generations to come. Meanwhile, in distant sectors, humans continued their exploration. Ships mapped new worlds, studied unknown phenomena, and established peaceful settlements. Everywhere humans went, they left a mark, not of conquest, but of unity and resilience. The story of their courage spread, inspiring species to act with care and determination, to protect what they valued, and to stand together in the face of danger. Even the Draith could not ignore the lesson. Their empire, once confident in fear and obedience, began to adapt. They studied human methods, observing how fear could create unity rather than division. Some Draith leaders quietly began to emulate the approach, realizing that true power did not always come from dominance. And in the heart of human civilization, Commander Reyes reflected on what had been achieved. They had faced a foe that seemed unstoppable, a force that had conquered countless worlds. And yet humans had prevailed, not because of superior weapons, but because of something far more powerful: their humanity. It was a lesson for the galaxy. Fear was not a weakness. Fear could be a guide, a motivator, and a source of strength. When a species faced fear with courage, when it acted to protect others, and when it embraced unity above all else, it could accomplish what no one thought possible. The humans had done more than survive. They had transformed the galaxy's understanding of fear and courage. Other species, once certain of their place in the universe, now looked to humanity with admiration, respect, and cautious awe. In the quiet moments after the battle, Commander Reyes stood on a hill overlooking the capital city of Prime. The sky was calm, stars glittering like distant lanterns. Fires from battle had been extinguished, and the sounds of rebuilding echoed through the streets. Humans moved with purpose, helping one another, restoring life to their world and quietly preparing for whatever challenges might come next. Reyes smiled, thinking of the children running and playing below, of families reunited and of communities working together. Humanity had faced fear and had not only survived but had thrived. They had proven that fear could be transformed into courage, that unity could overcome any force, and that care for one another could reshape the fate of a galaxy. Across the stars, the message spread: the humans were different, not because of strength, not because of weapons, but because of heart, and the galaxy finally understood. They had thought they knew fear. They were wrong. Humans had taught them the truth. True fear is facing a threat not for oneself, but for what one loves and acting despite it. The galaxy would never see fear in the same way again, and humanity would continue to shine, not as conquerors, but as protectors united in courage and fearless in spirit. The stars themselves seemed to acknowledge the change. Across the vast reaches of space, civilizations began to look differently at danger, conflict, and unity. Some species learned to cooperate, some learned to value life more deeply, and some simply watched humans with awe, knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. In the end, humans had done more than survive the Draith Dominion. They had reshaped the galaxy's understanding of strength, courage, and fear. They had shown that even a small species, when united and driven by love and care, could face the greatest challenges and emerge victorious. And so, the galaxy entered a new era, an era in which fear was no longer a tool of control but a source of courage, an era in which unity, love, and determination could shape destiny itself. Humanity had shown the way, and the universe would never forget.